You know, I've had the unfortunate experience of sitting in a lot of hospitals, oftentimes with parents whose kids are in a crisis situation. And these tragedies reveal a lot about the character of the parent and what they've done with their kids throughout their life. You know, when things are going really well in your life, it's easy to hide what's deeply motivating you in your inner world. But when your kid goes into a crisis, particularly a medical crisis, all of a sudden that junk comes out to the future and it becomes really obvious. And here's the question that becomes really obvious in those moments. Whose kid are they? Are they your kid? Or is it God's kid? Who owns that child, their future, their medical world, their destiny? Who's the one who's really in charge of them? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not about neglectful parenting. I am a do your chores, let's have fun in the yard, money doesn't grow on trees, buckle your seatbelts, look both ways before crossing, make good choices, I love you kind of dad. My kids are a big deal in my life. But for me, the hardest thing for me to give over to God is my kids. I mean, over the course of my life, God's asked me to give up a lot of things in order to be able to follow Him. You know, to give up my finances, or to give over my academics, or morality, to say, God, your way of living is better than my way. So if there's a conflict, I'm going to live according to what you tell me, not according to what I wanted to do anyway. I've given up my future to God and my marriage to God. And each of these things is hard. It's a little step that God does in your life to help you give things over. And you know what I've discovered every single time I've done it? God runs my life better than I do. Just the way that it works. He's a lot smarter than me, bigger than me. But for some reason, it's hard for me to translate that into my kid's life. You know, if I was smart and could just put 2 plus 2 together, I would realize God can run my kid's life better than I can as well. And the mature person has that kind of attitude. But let me ask you, where are you at with this? If you've got kids, have you given them over to God? Because if you own your kids too much, it drives you to be a controlling parent, to squelch them, to hold them so tight that they choke, maybe force them to live in isolation so they won't be polluted by the world. If you find yourself having intense emotional reactions to their behavior in public because they're an extension of your image, it's a sure sign that you own your kids too much. It's interesting that Christian families oftentimes see themselves as successful if their kids grow up to be nice. But you know, nice is not something that God says we should raise our kids to become. We're nice, we want our kids to be nice because it reflects well on us as parents. You know, if your kid's no trouble, that means good parents. But the Bible says, raise your kids to be passionate, caring, reflective, deep, radical, countercultural, to live upright in a world that's gone astray, to be warriors for Jesus, to be evangelistic, prophetic, or decisive. These are all biblical characteristics, and many of them are in conflict with being nice. Success for us is to give our kids over to God, and then we can be free to manage them, to create environments without our egos getting in the way, to set them in environments and to give them habits that give them the ability to succeed, to incentivize the right thing, and to help them to explore everything God made them to be. But at the same time, with the freedom to hold on loosely because of the fundamental conviction that they are not yours, they're God's. Now, this is not parental apathy, it's good stewardship as a parent. And it remembers who's really in control. And when you do that, it stokes the flames of who God made your kid to be. Now, giving things to God is a process, but we need to shift in our lives from being owner to being manager of everything, of our finances, of our future, of our academics, of our investments, even of our kids. From keeper to investor, from grabber to giver.